like that intro.
Love it.
Hey, everybody. It's Jon Dwoskin, Jeff Gunsberg, co-hosting a Think Big series called What Are You Good At? Jeff, good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
So, hey, I thought we could talk about today when it comes to what are you good at. One of the things I was thinking about today was things that my dad was really good at. And that I don't know if I became good at it because I watched him do it or if it's just innately, within me. But
Right.
One of the things my dad was great at, as he was a dentist, was follow up. And so he saw a ton of patients every day. And I don't know about all of them, but if they had any type of procedure, it was pretty common for him to call in and just check to see how they were doing. I'm really kind of processing this and thinking about it as I'm talking to you now, because anytime somebody called him, he returned every call every time somebody called him. My whole thing is like I return every call, text, email, same day unless I'm sleeping. And as I'm thinking about it now, my dad did the same thing. So I feel like
maybe you are who you are because of him.
Yeah. I really didn't piece this together until I'm talking to you right now. But he was really, really good at it. He gave all of his patients his direct line. They were always calling our house, and he was always calling them back on his cell phone. And he was great at customer service to the point where his patients, I'm not saying he was perfect, but his patients loved him so much. My dad sat on minus alpha omega because he was a dentist, sat on like no boards, no committees. And he was just dedicated to his family, dedicated to Alpha Omega, the dental fraternity. And when my dad passed away, he had over 1,500 people at his funeral, and a lot of them were patients.
Right.
You helped me piece together. This was like better than therapy. I pieced together something I never pieced together.
I feel like it's so. I feel like for sons and fathers, right?
Yeah.
I know we're coming off Mother's Day,
right?
Not Father's Day, but coming off the heels of that, like, I feel like sons are so hard, with wanting to separate themselves from their fathers, right? Like, and I'm doing this and I'm here and I'm going to a certain place and and in all reality, we came from a certain spot. We came from a place of, and as you get older, you start to realize, especially, like my dad's still here and with us, thankfully. And, but you start to realize like there is, certainly some influence that they have on you. Right. And for me, I have certain things like, right. My dad's like, you are who you hang out with, but I recognize and notice like from my dad, like he really had no fear, in, like putting himself in a spot that might be vulnerable for him and for something that he believed in, right? Like a business that he believed in, something that he felt, was amazing for him or could potentially be something, even if it didn't, right? Put himself out there to try something. And I learned that from him. I saw that from him, growing up, that, he had more than one thing that he tried that didn't work, but, he was always really open to doing that. And I think he got himself to a place where he could do that, right? He had a mainstay business that put him in a certain spot where he could, venture out. But it was really good for me to see that and, understand that, it's amazing to be able to take a chance on yourself. If you believe in something and to put yourself out there to do that, whether it worked or not. So, yeah.
No, I like that. My dad always told a story about how he started his own dental practice, took out, borrowed money, took out loans, did X, Y, and Z. and he had zero patience and two young kids. Uh, I never looked at it when, as I reflect on the story. When I mean, as I got older, I always just thought it was just kind of a normal course of business. But as I get older, I realize how that level of having no fear also influenced me because
Yeah.
I mean, I left commercial real estate and just started my own business. I mean, I just
Oh my
threw it up
God,
on Facebook.
you've done. I think that you've lived like multiple lives, in your one life, right? Like
Yeah,
you've done. I've known you for a long time, and like I've seen you do things that are like, it's like, oh, John's doing this. Oh no, now he's doing this, and like all of a sudden now, like for the past 10 years, you're my
yeah,
coach and my person, and like you work with our company, and there's it's great, it's great.
yeah. So wait, so let's talk more about dad, since I know we probably should be talking about mom since Mother's Day was yesterday. But this is kind of an evergreen episode when people listen to it, whenever they do. What's something else that your dad or maybe your mom, taught you through osmosis?
um, one thing that I think um is kind of good and bad is that like my dad always just taught like he just was able to like emotionally disconnect from stuff, like especially in work and just like able to say like like compartmentalize a scenario, deal with it emotionally, business wise, whatever,
Yeah,
and put it in that box and then move past it and then still deal with the person otherwise. And I think that's hard for people to deal with, right? Like so hard to separate like the business, personal, professional, all that stuff that like that relationship is really hard. Um you just, doesn't really harbor things, like he does, but he doesn't. Like he. I think it's more like the you've got this file in your brain, right? Like where you just like put those things, in order, and you always remember, what those things are, but you can continue to proceed forward without letting those impact you um, down the road. And I feel like he had many business scenarios that went on where he had some stuff that was not easy to do that with, and um, still was able to kind of move forward
yeah,
with those. But um, I really, I think if I'm speaking, fully honestly too about the just the generalities of our relationship, it was just what, like you're not getting anything unless you work hard.
yeah,
And like for me that was the whole thing, right? Like, and he demonstrated that, in my upbringing, right? I got nothing, like he didn't, it wasn't like, I drove my grandmother's car, like I had to work, from, 14, 15 years old, I worked and I had to earn my place. And he made me understand the value of a dollar, right?
yeah,
Like that was a big piece for me. Um, and I think there was some harshness along the way, right, with that whole thing. But he made me understand that like pretty quickly. And I struggle with that with my kids in today's times. It's hard.
different
Um,
times today.
I have very great kids, and they're amazing. They're amazing. Both my kids are just awesome. But
Yeah,
and they're starting to get that whole thing. But like how I was taught is not how they don't
yeah,
learn the same way, right? It's like apples to oranges. Like it's not the same
yeah,
exact thing. And so
yeah,
like you just I struggle with how like how do I impart the same value, and make them understand that
yeah,
when I'm dealing with an apples to oranges scenario where
yeah.
it's like, well, no, they're not going to, like, sorry, you're getting nothing.
Right,
Sorry,
right,
you
right.
you go work, and then that was
Yeah.
how it was for me. It was different.
Two things on that. I'm gonna be 53 on Thursday, and so
Oh man.
I told my kids I'm gonna learn how to say no to them. Right. That's like my goal for 53. But
Yeah.
also, my son just graduated college and he is getting his first job. He's moving to Chicago. And so I said to him, Jacob, now that you have your own job, um, you get to pay your own visa bill. And he was like, no, Dad, not yet. So to that point, it's a little bit different. I think something that I'm actually really good at that I think I really learned from my dad was just I think this is nature, but also a lot of nurture. He was really thoughtful of other people. I mean, he had people who worked for him for 40 years. And there was one person in particular, a hygienist that worked for him named Sue. She was going to quit and have a family. And he said, I don't want you to quit. If God forbid anything happened, just work one day a month so you can kind of keep your craft just in case you need to fall back on it. And she still tells that story today. And it was, she still works at my dad's office.
That's amazing.
But it's like those little things that go along. I think that go a long way. They have a long shelf life, and he was really good at it. And
I saw that same thing with my dad. So like my dad was in the meat business, and he would bring me to his plant in Detroit, and like I remember like being like he'd be like, all right, like I'm young, and he'd be like get on the high low, and he would like raise me up and like bring me down and like do the like I would have this like fun experience. But I also noticed that like he had these relationships with all these guys, like he wasn't the one operating the high low, like he had a really really amazing employee. His name was Willie, and he was the one who did that, and like he worked there forever and was just a super nice guy. And like like he had all these people around him who like in my upbringing, I was like, oh my god, he's such a dick, like all this stuff and whatever. But like he had all these people I'd like reflect back and like that respected him and liked him, and he took care of, and um he created an environment in his business where um everyone got along really well, and they were they felt that there was a spot for them, and that he took care of all these people. And so um although I was young, I noticed this go on. And it wasn't until I probably got a little older where, like he would call me to be like, you remember so and so, they passed away. And like he knew every time. Like he knew every person that this happened to. He'd be like, oh man, it's so terrible. He got sick and then this happened. He'd like tell me all these stories over and over and over again. And I think it took me a minute to realize that, like he cared about all these people. And I think that I feel like for you and for me, same thing, right? Like you care about the people you work with, and it's how you and I created the relationship we have too. It was like the same kind of random thing that happened. And um that's I think what it's all about, right? Like today, it's so easy in today's times to just take people for granted. You're texting, you're emailing, you're not face to face. There's none of that stuff going on. And it makes me feel good to like reflect back and think this is how it was done before. But you want to know what? It's still done that way now. Like the one-on-one, back to basics communication, person to person is it's, to me, is where it's at. And I think that's where people excel today, because you got to go back from this is not the everyone can text and email and like remove themselves, in my opinion, from the transaction or business or whatever that might be. It's easy, right? so easy to do that. And I think the real relationships and all that stuff is created in the person to person. And
Yeah.
so I learned that for sure from
Yeah.
him.
You know, it's so interesting about one-to-one, back to basics. My dad was the first dentist. The majority of all my dad's friends were dentists, and my dad was one of the very first dentists to get a fax machine. And
Facsimile.
and I remember him getting a fax machine, and everyone saying to my dad, and my dad talking about how everyone was saying to him, "Mark, what are you possibly getting? Why are you getting a fax machine? How would you? When and why are you possibly ever going to use a fax machine?" It was like very cutting edge at the time, and yeah, I mean, my dad was always pretty technically ahead of his time. We built our first computer. I mean, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so how do you take all that stuff and bring it to modern day 2025 with your company, Jeff? I mean, you're a principal, one of two owners at Title Connect, working with people on, you know, title, commercial real estate, residential real estate. You know, how do you take what you're good at and service the client today?
I'm just, like for myself, I think it's really important, it's kind of the whole point of this show, right? Is to to understand. I think first understand what you're good at, right? Like I know that I am not good at sitting at my desk and facilitating process and like going through the whole motions, all that stuff, right? I'm a relationship kind of guy. And so to me, it translates into knowing that,
Yeah,
understanding that, and then really just kind of putting it into effect as far as, how um, like for 2025, I have somebody helping me to get me in front of all my clients
yeah,
for the entire year. Every, 3, 4, 5 times a week, coffees, lunch, etc. And getting me in front of them, in person, because I know that's where I'm good, right? Like, you can send a message, it's just not received the same way. So I'm
yeah,
really trying hard to um, put myself out there, in person with the people that I like,
yeah,
and that I want to do business with and help them excel in their field. So until you get together with people and have a conversation, in 5 minutes, in person, you can really get to a place where you understand how they think, where
yeah,
they might want to go, who they
totally.
want to meet, and like what their goals are for the year. And like so quickly, you're like, to a place of such advancement, like in the conversation, where, it's so different than email back and forth. And you're like, like sitting behind the computer, it just doesn't do it for you.
Yeah,
So, I've really been striving to do that. It's been, um, I've had really good feedback, for me with all the folks that I've sat with, and they're just they're really happy to get together and like have someone invite them to coffee and
yeah.
and all that stuff. And when I tell them I don't drink coffee, and they're like, "Why'd you bring me here?" And I'm like, "Well, I drink tea."
Right,
But
but it sounds better to go
it's a funny
ask somebody to
thing.
go
Like
for right. You know, it's better to
but
ask somebody to go
it's
for
like a little
coffee
shtick, and we
versus
have like a
tea.
little
Right,
thing
right,
about
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it.
Totally, totally, totally.
So, but it's really nice to just kind of like like just sit down person to person. And I'll be honest, it seems to me like it's weird for a lot of, like people
Yeah,
are not really open to that necessarily otherwise, but like and nobody else is asking them to kind of do that.
yeah,
Like they're finding that this is like and like the majority of people are like, God, you know what? Thanks so much for like, like I feel like you care, right? And I
it's like
do, right? I
yeah,
want to be around people. I want to see people. I want to understand what they're doing, and I care, where that's going. So
Yeah. Well, it's almost like people like the rhythm changed after COVID. Everybody has to get kind of back to the rhythm, and some people are laggards to the rhythm of that. Yeah. One of the things I'm doing back to basics is because my kids are now a little bit older, is getting back into the my speaking tour, like the keynote speaking trainings and, things of that nature. And it's, to your point, it's with just being with groups of people. It's great. It's great. Yeah.
Yes. It's nice. It's,
it's great.
To me, it's like so nice to like sit down with somebody and like have a conversation, and just like do that. It seems odd to even say that, right? Like that, like we're so departed from that.
Yeah.
But it's that's a real thing that's going on now. And people I find really appreciate, like getting together.
Yeah.
So it's really nice.
They do. Wait, Jeff, tell everybody who you work with and how to connect with you.
Well, I'm with Title Connect, of course. I sell title insurance services here locally and nationally, and we're looking to work with any commercial real estate broker, residential real estate broker, agents, attorneys, bankers, lenders on all sides, and we're certainly open and more than happy to connect.
Love it. All right, good. All right, so let's just end with this, just giving everybody a couple things to think about. No fear, great follow-up, compartmentalize, think of other people, be forward-thinking in technology, and take a moment to reflect on what your dad taught you. Yeah, so it's great. Next week, we do this series every single Monday. What are you good at, to kind of get yourself back into yourself and think about what you're good at and how you can, infuse that into your business, into your life. Jeff, maybe next week we'll talk about our moms.
By the way, I think that on Father's Day, off the heels of Father's Day, we'll talk about what the moms are good at.
Yeah, all right, good. We can do that too. We can wait on that one. Oh, we actually have a guest speaker next week. Yeah, we have a guest that we're interviewing next week. All right, Jeff, this is great. Always fun. We're here every Monday, and this can be found on all podcast platforms as well, under Think Business. Jeff, this was great. Thanks, man. Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful. Thanks all.